Now, this can be sort of confusing because there are some chords that can function in multiple ways. For example, in major keys, the flat sixth can be considered, major sixth can be considered a borrowed chord from a parallel minor. So you can call this a borrowed chord. The other two are considered secondary dominant. So the major sixth you can call a 5 of 2. Secondary dominant can function as that. And similarly, the 3 chord can function as a 5 of 6. Okay? So it all depends on how they resolve. And you can see down here, 12.2, we have an example of that. So our first 2 chords are exactly the same, right? So we've got this 1 chord, and then here you can see this chord is resolving to a 2 chord, right? So we're going to call this one 5 of 2, it resolves to 2. Conversely, this chord right here, right, resolves to 1. So we can't call it a secondary dominant. It's not moving through proper channels, right, of resolution. So we're going to call this one a chromatic mediant, if that makes sense. Okay? All right. So as the term chromatic mediant suggests, mediants above and below the tonic are altered so that they are no longer diatonic. All right? So again, that fifth relationship just means they're either raised or lowered depending on whether they're in a major or minor key. In addition, the mediant characteristic is frequently emphasized through approach by root movement of a third. All right? So that means the root of the chord, so in this case, the G, right, moves down a third. Bam, chromatic mediant, all right? Any position is possible, but root position is the most common. You will see these in other inversions, but usually it's root position, like 99% of the time. And as seen in the preceding examples, chromatic mediants and submediants may appear in either major or minor keys. But remember, major keys, that submediant is going, and mediant is going to be lowered, and minor keys, it's going to be raised. Okay? Chromatic mediants are usually mediant or submediant chords that have been altered. They provide unusual color and interest while prolonging the tonic harmony. Chromatic mediants usually have a third relationship with the tonic, most often proceed from and to the tonic triad. So you can see it goes 1, 6, chromatic mediant, and then right back to 1. Okay? You can see this third relationship, down a third, back up a third. Right? And they less often do they go to the dominant. So occasionally they might pivot to a dominant chord, but usually it's right back to 1. All right. Now sometimes chromatic mediants are preceded or followed by their own secondary dominant, and in other instances create a full-fledged modulation. So they can be used for modulation. And you can see 12.3 demonstrates the third relationship with the roots. So here we go. Here's our chromatic mediant. Right? So we've got our nice 1 chord right here, our F chord. Here's our F. And then we move down a third to our D flat, and then right back up to F. So there's our third relationship. That's what they're talking about when it's a third relationship. Okay? And then back down to D flat, back up to F. This is a really common way to see this. And I will not even attempt to play this, but I will put up a link to where it is, okay? So the chromatic mediant in figure 12.4 begins as a triad and evolves into a 7th chord. So here's where we see this 7th chord. The resolution to the tonic chord by root movement of a third emphasizes the mediant characteristics. Okay, so here we go. Here's our altered mediant. We've got our lowered B flat. okay? And then we we just add a note onto the 7th chord, okay? We've got our B flat, we add, yeah. And then we have our 3rd relationship down to C. Okay? So that's all there is to it. Oh, sorry, it's an E flat. So here's our E flat chord, right? Here's our low E flat right here. There's the root. And then we just add our 7th to it. So you can see we add this D flat. So now we've got E flat, G, B flat, and then D flat. Okay? And then, of course, it moves down to the C. So that's our 3rd relationship. Cool? And here you can see it's also not only is it a 7th chord, it's also an inversion of a 7th chord. So there you go. So a little bit of history. You're really not going to see these during the Baroque period. You might see it during the Classical period, very rarely. Really, when you're going to see this is the Romantic era, all right? So the Romantic era is the most common for these chords. Although we do occasionally, as you can see, very occasionally and rarely, we will see it in the Mozart Fantasia. Right? You can see this little chromatic mediant movement. F sharp to D. So there's a little bit of a relationship right there that they're pointing out. Right? Now, when we get into the full-blown Romantic era, this is when we see it. They're all over the place. So, and this is just another way for composers to sort of expand their tonal repertoire and expand the tonalities that they can use and the chords that they can use. So it's basically their way of having an excuse for breaking the rules that Bach set up, right? Bach would never do this. So this is their way of explaining away how they're breaking these rules, okay? So here in this Brahms piece, we've got this 1, and then a lowered major 6th, back to 1, and you can see this relationship right there. Bam, right back, and then right back. And then notice it does not resolve back to 1. It actually resolves to the subdominant. So occasionally it will not resolve back to 1. Just be aware. Usually, though, it'll be all set up for you on a silver platter. Okay? And I will post links to these so you can actually hear them in context. I will not even attempt to play these, though. So this 3rd relationship of chord roots in general and chromatic mediants in particular become even more prominent in the post-Romantic and Impressionist period. So Impressionists love this stuff. In the very, very late Romantic, if you're thinking like Wagner, early Stravinsky, early Schoenberg, before they went full serialist and primitivist and all that other stuff, they love this stuff. They're all over it. So this is what you'll see in really late, most commonly you'll see it in late Romantic and early 20th century music. So, and again, here's Ravel. And you'll see here's your minor 3rd, the minor lower 3rd, lower 3rd. Notice he's in a key with a lot of sharps. So you're not always going to just flat the 3rd. In this case, because you already have so many sharps set up, right? You've already got your A sharp. You're going to have to flat it or lower it down to a natural instead of a sharp, okay? So in this case, it's still a lowered minor 3rd. It's just that it's going to be lowered down to A natural from all these sharps, okay? All right, so some applications. Because chromatic mediants are reached by 3rd relationship progressions, chromatic movement such as B to B sharp, A to A flat, F sharp to F in melodic lines is common, right? And you do see this a lot. In fact, if we look back at some of these examples, you'll see it right here. So you've got E natural, E flat, back to E natural. So that movement right there, and then right back to E flat. So that chromatic movement, very common. You'll even see it in this little example right here. So in our chromatic meeting, we go from G to G sharp, back down to G natural. So look for that movement as well. In here, same thing. All right, we try to hold on to, so we've got this C that we hold, or the A flat and A natural. So we A flat, back to A, all right, back to the A flat, our chromatic median. So that's also very much included. So look for chromatic movement. Chromatic medians are either major or minor triads generally, so doubling patterns are often the same for diatonic triads. So treat them like a normal triad. Double the root whenever possible. Otherwise, you're going to double the third generally. Try to avoid doubling the fifth. Yeah. So you can see here. Okay, so here you can see how they are doubled. So here we're in the key of C major. And we've got our nice C major chord right here. And then we move to a lowered minor third. You can see this third relationship moving like this. You can see the E flat. They double the E flat right up there. And then G flat and B flat. Right? And then we move back to the 1. You can see our chromatic movement, G, G flat, back to G natural. And even here we doubled it, right? So we've got E, E flat, back to E natural. Right? Here we've got it with the lowered major 6th. And this is even in first inversion. So now we are not moving the tonic note. Notice that. So we don't have this third relationship because we made it a first inversion. All right? So keep that in mind. But look at how smoothly everything moves. E to E flat to E natural. In here, in our minor chord, we move it to major third. You see the third relationship and our chromatic movement right there. And more chromatic movement here. Technically, this is even chromatic. This is C natural to B natural up to C. Okay? Down here, we are in the key of C major. You can see we go from 1, 5, 1, then flatted minor third, lowered minor third. So you can see the third relationship in the bass, and then chromatic movement right there. And here we've got an example of it existing in its secondary dominant. So we've got a 5 of our lowered third, and then it moves to the lowered third. So be aware, this can happen. So you can have a secondary dominant of the lowered third, and you'll know it's that because it's going to look crazy, right? And it'll be followed directly by the lowered third itself, right? And then we move to a 5, and then finally a 1. So it doesn't always have to resolve to a 1 chord. Keep that in mind. Or from a 1 chord.